Hi, and welcome to another video brought to you by TurboCamaro.ca. Today we're going to be doing another long video on how to install an alcohol injection system. This is specifically the DevilsOwn Stage 1 alcohol injection system from DevilsOwn.com. I actually got this off of eBay for a little bit of a reduced price, so that's fine, but you can order it off of the actual manufacturer's site and probably some other places too. I want to go through the kit with you. I want to go with you how I decided where to install it, and then actually how to go install the rest of the components. So a couple things with this kind of thing is you have to figure out sort of how to install it. So I recommend reading the instruction manual, which it did come with there. It's a pretty good manual. It's all the information's on the manufacturer's site too if you want. There's lots of other like forum posts and whatnot, but I didn't find a specific instruction video on how to install this kit, which is obviously similar to other kits and a lot of the parts can be interchangeable, but it's important to note that I just thought this would be a good video and precursor to having the turbo installed. So here it is. Now, a couple of these pieces are not part of the kit. For instance, this here and the actual bottle. And then this kit, as it stands right now in front of me, is missing the pump, and that's already been installed. So I'll kind of jump ahead here. First thing you want to do is figure out where you're going to put the kit. In my engine bay, I'd like to relate it to being close to where the washer bottle is. The washer bottle is going to be what actually holds the alcohol or the alcohol water mixture. In this case, I'll probably be running a 50-50 mixture at the very least just to start. This sort of design system is sort of ideal for a 50-50, and honestly, it saves a bit of money on alcohol and gives you kind of the best bang for your buck, unless of course you're doing a full-on performance setup. So this is the washer bottle out of a 67 Camaro. This is the original washer bottle. I've painted it silver. I'm going to probably accent the lettering and dashes on it with black just to match the intake manifold. But I do want to just note I put a little line on the side there so that you can see how full it is. So it's kind of a nice little setup. The cap is not, it's here somewhere. Either way, this here is important. As you'll see here, this is the washer bottle holder from the 67 Camaro. And I've added a piece. This back piece that's attached to it, you can see here there's some paint issues. Didn't really do enough paint, but you can't see it. So what I've done essentially is made it so that I've had a custom bracket and I can put it in a new location. So I based the location of the install around being close to where the washer bottle is going to go, because generally the pump should be close to the washer bottle, and that means that, you know, most of the wiring has to reach from there. So my original washer bottle was in this corner of the engine bay. It sat just right down under here, which is fantastic for the car. However, that makes it, the battery's way over there, the firewall is way over there. So then if you want to run wiring to an ignition wire switch and the starter switch and whatnot, it's literally the starter and all that stuff is over here. So it just seemed to me that putting it in that default location, you know, in that far corner of the engine, was really just made things more difficult. And then I had a difficulty with the turbo is going to end up here, and then I've got the alcohol stuff is very close to the turbo, and I don't really want that for heat purposes. So really it made sense to put it as far away from this corner as possible and maybe closer to the firewall. Obviously this location is got lots of stuff going on. There's no room for a washer bottle there. So this far corner of this particular engine, because it's a straight 6, has nothing going on. Normally there'd be valve cover for a V8 over here and some other things, and it would be a lot tighter. But this corner is completely empty. It's kind of almost odd how empty it is. So that being said, obviously there's where the pump is. I've got the cover on it. Probably can't see it all that well, but the pump is installed on the wheel well, and it's just 4 screws that it came with, and I put the cover on it, so it doesn't really look kind of inconspicuous right now, but that's the idea. Now you can see the heater core box basically that's on the firewall has these 2 little they're like threaded things sticking out, threaded bolts. And I wanted to use those to mount the washer bottle, but the issue was that box sticks out, so I couldn't get it to go. So you can see here what I've done is made it so that this little piece that sticks out goes over top of those, just like that. And then I have 2 basically self-threading or self-sticking bolts or head nuts that go over top of those and fasten this in that location right there, and it just sits on the box, and I'm hoping that it doesn't make any rattling noises. If it does, I might have to put some some rubber underneath it so it doesn't bounce around. But that puts it so that the washer jar is just a couple inches above the bottom of the pump, and that's where the actual water goes. Now this is a push pump, like I was mentioning earlier, so it needs to have gravity feeding it. So you need to make sure that the washer jar is above the pump, and in this case the pump down below, it's just above, it's only a couple of inches away, so it should be just fine. So once you get that configuration figured out, then you can kind of start doing the wiring and the running of the hoses. So what I want to go and do next is get my washer bottle in there set up. So washer bottle, in order to feed, needs to have a hose coming out the bottom. So it comes with a bunch of different fittings. This is the one you need here. So it's got a little filter in it. It's kind of nice. From what I can see here, most of the DevilsOwn product pieces that comes with are pretty high quality. There's nothing here that they've cheaped out on. If you wanted something else, part of the kit, you can, of course, you can get it. So it's sort of like a bulkhead fitting. You have to drill a hole. Now the instructions say a 7/8 inch drill bit hole. I honestly don't have a 7/8 inch drill bit, so I'm gonna have to kind of do my own thing. I'll have to cut it to fit myself, and I will just make it work. All right, so I finished with the bottle. You can see here that the valve is installed. Pretty much all you have to do is just put a hole in it, and I just rounded out the hole. It's close to the inside diameter of the outside diameter of the threading on the other side, and then just installed it. It's got a built-in rubber seal. As long as it's tight enough, that should be fine. I'll have to double check. Worst case scenario, you could put some silicone, like some ultra black in there or something, and that would be fine. The hose connection on this is like a press fit, like a press lock. So all you have to do is just feed the hose in, and then you can't pull the hose out without pressing down on the red collar here. As far as the top goes, I just took the existing lid and just sort of melted the hole, the vent hole in the top closed, and then inserted some more plastic into the tube here. So now I can kind of use this part as like a handle to pull it off to refill it. So that's that. The hose piece, I only need about this long of a hose to go into the bottom, and then it'll go there and it'll go into the inside of the pump, and then that part is done. So now all that's left is to do the relay and hoses and the nozzle. So looking at the diagram here, this is I basically printed this right off the DevilsOwn website, and it's great. It's bigger than the one that's in the instruction manual, and that's really helpful. The only thing to look at is that mine doesn't come with a solenoid, so that makes this part of it quite a bit easier. But as far as the relay goes, you have to go by the numbers on the relay itself, because I'm assuming that they get different relays from different manufacturers, and the harnesses may or may not be made by them, and they might be from different manufacturers too. So the colors don't necessarily line up with the specific number on the relay. So in this case, the diagram actually shows a red wire, blue, black, which isn't used, green, and yellow. However, the actual numbers on there with the existing harness I have, the colors weren't right. The red wire actually is black on my harness, blue is blue, the green wire is actually white, and the yellow wire is yellow. So it's good, it's just to be careful with that. I mean, that could be any kit, doesn't matter if it's DevilsOwn or Snow or whatever. Make sure that the colors you have actually match the diagram and so on, so that you don't get some kind of crosswire thing. Like, it might not have been this obvious. It might have been, you know, the yellow was green and the green was yellow, and that could have really messed things up. So just be careful. As far as hooking it up goes, I've done it already. So it wasn't very difficult. Essentially, they just have to go where you'd expect them to go. In this case, the black wire off of the relay goes to the NO labeled pin on the switch. The blue wire, which is off 30 off the relay, goes directly to a 12-volt battery source, which I took right out of the fuse box. I spliced into a wire that was fused off of the fuse box, and in this case, it actually already has its own inline fuse that I used as well. So it's fused from the fuse box that goes to the fuse, which goes to obviously the battery, so that's fine. And the green wire, which is actually white in mine, goes to 12-volt ignition. There's actually a pink wire on the 67 Camaro coming off of the actual key, like the actual ignition switch. I tapped into that so that I got a direct ignition wire, and then the yellow goes to the positive on the pump. And of course it would have gone to the solenoid, but I don't have it. So from there, otherwise, it's just grounds. I did exactly what it showed. I ran a ground from the COM on the switch to just a ground, and the same actual source for the pump ground as well. So I'll show you what I did here. I'm not going to show you the relay because really how I've done the wiring under the dash may be totally different than how you do it. The switch for now I put right here, kind of up. It's kind of an awkward spot, but it's still attainable because I can get to the dial to change the boost pressure. And as well, it was extremely convenient for where I had the proper diameter vacuum hose for the bottom of the switch. I got it going into the same one line that goes to the gauge, the vacuum boost gauge in the on the center console there. So it's overall a great spot for it, but I found like this particular switch, it has a hole right here for mounting it, but there really isn't any other like way to mount this effectively. I'd have to either fabricate a bracket or somehow you know, tap into or even wrap something around where I've got this zap strap. So I literally have this zap strap right now to a bundle of the wiring harness there, which is fine, but it may not be a permanent solution. But we'll leave it there for now because it is accessible and is hooked up properly, and in fact it actually is very convenient where it is. So I may have to come up with a way of attaching it to maybe the windshield wiper pump or motor or something like that. From there, all the wires I went right through the existing harness, the rubber grommet that's in the firewall there. It's a great spot, and I was able to punch a hole through that. The wires for everything else run all the way around down to the pump here, and it was relatively easy to wire. As you can see here, I've got the hose running just basically right out of the bottom of the bottle directly into this side of the pump here. It's a pretty short, maybe 10-inch or so hose, and it just gravity feeds in there. It's actually pretty tight. I'm gonna have to keep my eye on the idea that maybe this will drip or droop down and then it won't feed up into there, but we'll have to take a look. I may have to sort of zap strap that in place because I made it so tight there. But either way, now the important thing is getting it so that the pump, the outside of the pump goes into the nozzle, and it's sort of selecting the nozzle location. What you want to do is you want to have it after the blow-off valve, but obviously before the carburetor. You could have it directly in the plenum, but I don't really want to have any holes in the plenum if I don't have to. I think in the pipe prior to the plenum is the best location for this. So I'm going to probably do it on the back side right about here. The nozzle for this kit is what they call a low profile nozzle. I'm not certain I'd call it low profile, but it does basically go into this fitting, which then has a, threads in, and then it has a 1/8 inch NTP head. So it'll sort of thread into a appropriate sized hole. So what you want to do is find your location and drill a 11/32 drill bit, which is right here. It's kind of a big one. And then use, if you can, a 1/8 NTP tap. And that's what I've got there, which works perfectly. And you can see it here. This is what you end up with. This kind of looks a little bit scrubby, but I didn't really care because I was just doing a sort of a test run with it. So yeah, just drill out the hole, clean it up a little bit, and then if you can, if it's thick enough, you'll have to use the tap. If it's a really thin metal, like a sheet metal of some kind, you could probably get away with just threading it right through and it'll be nice and tight and you're good to go. But on this I prefer, because it's I think a 3mm aluminum, I chose that I didn't want it to get too soft and strip the hell out of it, so I used the tap on it, and it seems to work great. So you just thread that into wherever you're going to have the nozzle go, and then run the tube to it, and then we're pretty much done. Alright, so there we go. You can see the nozzle's been installed in the side of the pipe there. I just tightened it in pretty much as hard as it would go. Right there is one of the other fittings. It's a check valve, so you just want to put that fairly close to the nozzle. It doesn't need to be this close, but just in my case I've only got about 2 feet from the pump to the nozzle, so it's, right there was really easy and didn't affect the line at all. And then the line just goes down into the output side of the pump, so really easy. I may end up moving this, I'm not entirely sure yet, but right there it isn't hurting anything, isn't getting touched by any hot lines, and overall is easy to work around, so I'm not too worried about it. Other than that, that's pretty much it. So now in theory, I got it set at the lowest setting, which is 3. So 3 psi, this thing should kick in and spray from whatever solution I have in here. In this case, I'll probably end up using the 50-50 mix of methanol and distilled water. I'm going to keep my eye out for the windshield washer fluid that has the methanol in it. That would be easy and kind of pre-mixed, which I'd like. And then from there, I may have to tune it up a little bit, change the PSI once I get the turbo on and whatnot. Right now I have a size 3 nozzle, and it comes with a size 7 nozzle. So right now I've got it will spray a lower amount of fluid than what it could spray. Based on the horsepower and size of this engine, the 7 is probably a better fit. I may even need a slightly larger one, but I think for now the 3 will do, just so that I can get into tuning and whatnot. So I'm not going to test it out in this video. I don't have the turbo. I can't create boost without doing it artificially. I considered blowing in the one of the vacuum lines and trying to get it to go, but really there's no value in that. I'll just do a review video on this once it actually gets running and I'm able to tune it up properly. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to check us out on Facebook and Twitter as Turbo Camaro 67, as well as the YouTube comment section below. And for more videos and information, feel free to check out turbocamaro.ca. Thank you for watching.